I was wrong. You're probably still wrong. Almost everyone is. When was the last time you've heard praise for a Soviet-style apartment block or one of the grandiose squares that were built during that era? If you are like most, the answer's probably never. But there's a lot that can be learned from these places, and that's what we're going to be learning today. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to start with probably the most controversial yet crucial piece of Soviet cities, the apartment blocks. These blocks are often cited as ugly and unhealthful for the people who live there. But there is something to be learned. While the architecture is not great, and there is a lot of things wrong with them, the idea that a lot of stuff can be in walking distance or without a car trip distance from a place is still relevant, and that did happen in these apartment blocks. There's often a neighborhood store, or at least a small convenience shop, inside the area. And this is an idea that is very much still relevant. Urban planners strive to have some sort of store, or at least base store, inside neighborhoods, and often zoning prohibits it now. So there's a lot of things to be gained from the idea of having just a convenience store on the block of the place. And while there's now better ways to build and ways to build that are less controversial, the idea of putting in a small convenience store in any density of neighborhood really has not been lost. If anything, there's a need for a model in these new mixed-use neighborhoods that are cropping up everywhere. And there is a model that can be found in neighborhoods like these. That's one thing that often gets extremely overlooked in conversations about how bad these places are and how unhealthy they are. Another thing that is happening in these Soviet cities is that the high-density housing of these apartment blocks is feeding into transit systems. And the model of high-density housing or medium-density housing near transit is something that will never be lost in urban planning and is always necessary. The concept that this has happened before, while maybe can be executed better, is still there and is worth investigating if anyone's looking to build higher density housing in places. Programs such as Tallinn's free metro and public transit rides for users are fueled by a newer wave of growth and these old buildings, which create a lot of fusion and a lot of transit use that is possible. The other controversial element of ex-Soviet cities is public squares. These are often grand, sometimes a little too grand, highlighting controversial leaders. But once these statues have been taken down and the plazas function as a centerpiece of the city, it's actually quite fine to have them around. And they are kind of a bastion for plaza design, especially when people build new cafes and new buildings around it and make them into economic hubs for their respective cities. It's the same thing with high-density and transit-oriented houses. In quite a few cities, it's an arms race to build it and design it well. But there's no one looking at the places that have already done it. Sometimes it's ancient, and sometimes it's just from the 60s and 70s. Ultimately, what is the city that's winning? The city that tried to innovate their way out of urbanism problems with random inventions that have been untested and ended up as an urban mess, or the city that built on all the past things that have happened in various other cities and have been tested and ended up with a surviving city? It's option number 2. And ultimately, although Soviet architecture and urbanism didn't get everything right, there is some stuff that cities can learn. And transit usage and happiness metrics in these countries have been going up, so I feel like there's actually quite a bit more that can be learned than we thought. It's not an urbanist dumpster fire, it's just a place that's trying to survive and is doing so relatively well, like all other cities. Ultimately, no place is ever an urbanist write-off. We just don't give places as much opportunities to prove themselves as we really should. So I feel like it was worth shining a light on the Soviet cities that still exist and are still thriving today and how they can help us learn some things about current cities. I hope y'all enjoyed watching, and that's it for the video.